નમસ્તે અક્ષતભાઈ.
નમસ્તે સાહેબ, કેમ છો?
બસ મજામાં સાહેબ. આપણા સીડી પટેલ પણ અત્યારે ઉપસ્થિત છે.
હા સાહેબ, નમસ્કાર.
નમસ્કાર.
નમસ્તે નમસ્તે અક્ષયભાઈ. અક્ષતભાઈ મજામાં?
સર, હેલો, હાવ આર યુ સર?
બસ મજામાં. નાના રામ રામ.
હેલો.
થોડુંક ભણીને.
હેલો કુમાર સ્વામી સર, હાવ આર યુ સર?
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
ગુડ ઇવનિંગ સર.
Good evening. Good evening, sir.
આફ્ટર લોંગ ટાઈમ.
Yeah.
ઉર્વેશજી, જય હિન્દ સર.
મજામાં નિગમભાઈ?
મજામાં સાહેબ.
સાહેબ હાજર?
યસ પ્લીઝ સર.
અક્ષતભાઈ મજામાં? સાહેબ 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 તમે સાહેબ પ્રણામ ના કરો સાહેબ. સાહેબ તમે પ્રણામ ના કરો.
Hello, Parishji, how are you?
Hello.
Parishji, today we have gone through the summer.
To deliver his talk on the subject of recent amendment in GST Act and latest judgment on the GST Act. Friends, this webinar itself is unique one has it is organized by esteemed association. Jointly, in fact, the purpose, aim and motto to all these associations is to in this pertaining knowledge to their members. I am happy that today webinar organized jointly and once again I welcome to all in this webinar and I am sure you all will have session with full of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinodji. Friends, today's speaker, Mr. Uchit Sheth, actually, he doesn't require any introduction, but by way of gesture, I request President Sunil Keswani of TAG. Sunilji, please give your speech, please.
Thank you, sir. Good evening and a very warm welcome on behalf of National Association of Tax Professionals, the Gujarat Sales Tax Bar Association and Tax Advocate Association of Gujarat. Friends, before I start, I would wish to invoke for all of us the blessings of the teachers and gurus on this occasion of the Teachers' Day. As a profession who are practicing law, we were, we are, and we always will be a student. Friends, you would appreciate that with regard to implementation of GST, three things we can say with certainty. The implementation of GST was never flawless as it was thought to be. Number two, the government to an extent tried to come out and solve the grievances of the taxpayers and tax professionals with notifications, circulars and ROD orders. And number three, the courts have time and again intervened, interpreted and at times struck down the provisions which did not stand the scrutiny of law. Friends, our topic for today pertains to such recent amendments and judgments which will be dealt by our eminent speaker, learned Uchit Sheth ji. Friends, Uchit Sheth, the learned speaker for the day, is BCom, ACA and LLB. He secured the 14th rank in India in CA final examination together with a gold medal in indirect taxes. He stood second in the university in third LLB examination conducted by the Gujarat University. Professionally, he worked as a junior with V. Sridharan, senior advocate in Bombay High Court. Currently, he is practicing in Gujarat High Court, the Supreme Court of India and the tribunals on various taxation matters with his father Nayan Sheth, advocate at Ahmedabad. He has appeared in various cases involving important issues relating to the interpretation of taxation laws as well as the constitutional wires of various provisions of tax laws. I would just like to give a brief introduction so far as the landmark and important judgments in which he has appeared. Philco Trade Center Private Limited versus Union of India, wherein clause 4 of section 143 of the CGST Act was struck down as unconstitutional. Tractor and farms equipments versus the state of Gujarat, wherein the levy of entry tax on the tractor was struck down as violating of Article 304A of Constitution of India. West Coast Water-Based Private Limited versus State of Gujarat, wherein the assessment order passed taking different view on classification compared to the view adopted in determination order passed under the earlier law was cost as being without the jurisdiction. Reliance Industries versus the State of Gujarat, where the revision notice issued under section 75 of the Gujarat VAT Act on the basis of Supreme Court judgment was paused and set aside as being without jurisdiction. And last but not the least, Torrent Power Limited versus the Union of India, wherein para 4.1 of the circular issued by CBIC issued under the GST Act and the summons issued on the basis of the such circular was quashed on the basis of circular being contrary to the legal provisions of the GST Act regarding the composite supply. Friends, apart from this, Mr. Uchit Seth has been awarded the best article writer in the Sales Tax Journal published by the Gujarat Sales Tax Bar Association for the year 2013-14 and 14-15. He has been awarded the best column writer for the year 2015-16. Shri Uchit Seth has given honorary services as the editor of the Gujarat Sales Tax Bar Association Sales Tax Journal for the year 2017-18 and the year 18-19. He has delivered lectures and presented papers with regard to various sales tax, VAT, GST at seminars and refresher courses of various associations like ours and also at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has participated as the trustee of Brain Trust meetings at various seminars. Friends, with these words, it is my pleasure to introduce today's eminent speaker, Shri Uchit Bhai Seth, to this August webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you, Nigam Bhai.
Thank you, Sunil Bhai. Thank you very much, sir. Now, friends, without wasting of time, I am requesting Mr. Uchit Seth to deliver his speech. Be clear, my friends. Today, Uchit sir is going to be give his lecture on recent amendment in GST from January 2020 and latest judgments under the GST. Now, floor is yours, Mr. Uchit Seth, please.
Before Uchit Bhai, sorry for interruption. मैं अभी भी विनती करता हूँ जिन लोगों के कैमरे बंद है वो लोग अगर हो सके तो अपना कैमरा चालू कर दें प्लीज. जिन लोगों के कैमरे the person who has shut their camera off, please keep your camera on so that we also be encouraged with your gesture. Thank you. Uchit Bhai, sorry, and go on, sir.
Respected organizers of this webinar today and my delegate friends. The topic allotted for today is recent amendments in GST law and the latest judgments regarding GST law. What I propose to do is to analyze certain amendments and certain judgments which would still invoke certain questions on part of taxpayers as well as tax professionals. So we are not going to just cursorily go through the amendments or the judgments. We are trying to analyze them and analyze only those amendments and those judgments which still raise certain doubts and which require certain resolutions. First, I start with the latest amendment which has been brought into force with effect from 1st of September 2020. Of course, the amendment was made by the Finance Act of 2019, where a proviso was inserted to section 50 of the GST Acts regarding interest liability. Now, this is an issue which has affected a lot of people. We'll all be aware of the issue, but just to highlight in brief, the view of the authorities was that if I file a late return and if suppose I admit tax liability of rupees 100 in the return, then I need to pay interest on that entire 100 rupees. the view of the assessees and the tax professionals was that, look, out of the 100 rupees, I am discharging 90 rupees by way of input adjustment of input tax credit. So kindly charge interest only on the balance 10 rupees, which I actually pay in cash. So this was a dispute between the assessees and the government. Ultimately, by Finance Act 2019, a proviso was inserted where effectively what is provided is that interest shall be levied on that portion of tax which is paid through the electronic cash ledger. So the view of the SSE seems to have been accepted, and it is now clarified by way of a proviso that you will be liable to pay interest only on the net liability which you discharge through the electronic cash ledger. As I said, though the amendment was brought by Finance Act 2019, it was not made effective. Now by a notification, it is made effective with effect from 1st of September 2020. Again, doubts were raised that what about the past periods, because in between the GST Council had made a recommendation that kindly introduce this provision with retrospective effect. However, the notification gave only prospective effect to the amendment, and therefore again there was a doubt what would happen to the past liabilities. CBIC by way of a clarification has said that although we have not brought in the amendment with retrospective effect, we'll apply it retrospectively and we will not be demanding interest on gross tax liability for the past period. So according to me, amendment coupled with the clarification, insofar as the tax liability which is admitted in the returns and which is paid late, now there should not be any doubt the interest should be chargeable only on the net tax liability. But the bureaucratic manner in which the amendments are made in our country has led to another issue which will crop up because of this amendment. If you look at the proviso very carefully, it carves out an exception to this new provision that interest will be leviable only on net tax liability. The exception as given in the proviso is that this will be applicable only if the return is filed prior to proceedings initiated under section 73 or 74 of the GST Act. So now the question arises that if I have not admitted that tax liability along with the return, but the authority raises some issue and gives me a notice under 73 or 74 demanding tax. If suppose I have balance in my electronic credit ledger, whether I am liable for interest on gross liability or whether I am liable for interest on net liability. Obviously, considering the language of the proviso, the authorities are bound to say that to you, this proviso is not applicable. Yours is not a case where you admitted the liability and paid the tax late. Yours is a case where you did not admit the liability and proceedings were initiated under 73 and 74, and therefore we will impose interest on the gross liability. In my opinion, although the proviso carves out an exception to proceedings under 73 and 74, it is now well settled that the proviso cannot dictate the main provision. I will be liable to pay interest provided the main provision requires me to, or the charging provision requires me to pay interest on that amount. Now, if we forget the proviso for the time being, if we look at the body of section 50 subsection 1, it creates a charge of interest. Interest तभी लेवी होता है जब there is a failure to pay the tax due. Now, in a case where I have tax credit in my electronic credit ledger, and suppose a demand notice is issued to me under section 73, can I not say that although demand notice is raised under 73, there was no failure to pay tax due on my part, because to a certain extent tax had already been paid and there was already available tax credit in the tax credit ledger. In other words, the charging section itself does not envisage imposition of interest on gross tax liability, and therefore even though the proviso says that the proviso will not be applicable to proceedings under 73-74, we can very well say that even otherwise we are not liable to pay interest under 50 on gross tax liability. Now, in fact, for this proposition, we can find support from certain earlier judgments regarding earlier law. Under the Gujarat VAT Act itself, this issue had arisen, where if an assessment is made and in the assessment order, although tax is demanded, there is sufficient tax credit balance. Issue arose whether interest can be imposed or not. Gujarat High Court in the case of Jai Steel and Tube Traders 2015 80 VST 530 Gujarat took a view that if there is sufficient tax credit balance in the electronic, not electronic, but there it was a manual credit ledger, then there cannot be any imposition of interest liability. There were a series of judgments on this line for the purpose of the Gujarat VAT law, and that issue was settled insofar as that provision was concerned. So according to me, those judgments can definitely apply even for the purpose of GST law. And therefore, if suppose today a show cause notice is issued to me for any purpose under 73 and 74, and if I have a balance in the electronic credit ledger, then I can very well say that there is no requirement of impose, or there is no liability of interest on the portion which is covered by the balance in the electronic credit ledger. For this proposition, we should also keep in mind that it is also well settled that charge of interest is a substantive provision to be strictly construed. So unless there is a provision imposing interest, there cannot be an interest liability. So the authority cannot say that you are not specifically getting the benefit of the proviso, therefore you pay the interest. They have to show that section 50 subsection 1 takes you within the ambit, and therefore you are required to pay the interest liability. Again, central sales tax judgment is very well known in the case of Indian Carbon Limited 106 STC 460 Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court takes a view that without an express provision, there cannot be levy of interest. So according to me, considering such legal position, after the amendment, while there will be no issue insofar as admitted tax liability in the return is concerned, we will face issues insofar as proceedings under 73-74 are concerned, to which we need to respond by relying on these judgments and such propositions of law. An offshoot of this proposition is an issue whether interest can be levied on recovery of erroneous refund. This is another issue which is likely to arise. Nowadays, we are getting to know various show cause notices where they are claiming that the authority committed error in granting refund to the SSE. Now they feel that the refund is not due to the SSE, so they ask the SSE to pay back the refund. Again, the question arises whether interest liability can be imposed on erroneous refund which is granted to an SSE. Where again we can say that the provision says that interest is payable on failure to pay the tax due. If the authority granted erroneous refund, which the authority is claiming back, then there cannot be a failure to pay tax due by the dealer or by the SSE, and therefore there cannot be an interest liability. Under the earlier erstwhile regime, there were tribunal judgments to this effect. Now this will be a fresh controversy under the GST law, and therefore for erroneous refund also we can take a stand that there is no interest liability. Second amendment which I will deal with is the amendment to section 140 of the GST law by the Finance Act 2020, which came into effect from 16th of May 2020. Now this transitional tax credit issue is not getting settled despite various judgments, despite various clarifications. Now, as we all know, initially Rule 117 of the GST rules required filing of Form Tran 1 before 27th of December 2017. Now, there were various SSEs who could not file that form. A, due to technical glitch, that is a separate issue. B, because for any reason they forgot to upload, their consultant forgot to upload, etc. So now the issue which arose was whether without having uploaded Tran 1, the SSE can claim the benefit of the transitional credit or not. Gujarat High Court gave two conflicting judgments. First, Willowwood Chemicals 58 GSTR 310, where the Gujarat High Court took a view that that Rule 117 is a mandatory provision. Unless you file that Form Tran 1 within the stipulated time limit, you cannot claim get the credit. Thereafter, Gujarat High Court in the case of Siddharth Enterprise 71 GSTR 346 changed its view. It said that no, the section does not provide for a time limit. The rule cannot override the section. The time limit which is prescribed under Rule 117 is only a directory time limit. We hold that input tax credit is a vested right, and therefore that cannot be taken away by the rule making authority, and therefore we hold the rule to be directory. So if credit is admissible, you cannot deny the credit only on the basis of non-filing of Tran 1. So that was the view canvassed by the Gujarat High Court. This view was followed by a number of other high courts. Punjab and Haryana, Adford Technologies, recently Delhi High Court, brand equity treaties, all judgments taking a view that Rule 117 was directory and mere non-filing of Tran 1 cannot result into denial of transitional tax credit. After all this, with effect from 16th of May 2020, Section 140 has been retrospectively amended from 1st of July 2017. And in all the subsections of 140, the phrase within such time has been introduced. In other words, while the high courts had commented that the section did not prescribe for a time limit, now the legislature retrospectively says that no, we will introduce the phrase within such time limit as may be prescribed in the provision itself, thereby intending that the time limit is mandatory. So now the question which will arise is that whether the judgments of the various high courts get watered down or whether they get overturned by the amendment, or what would be the effect. Now, insofar as that issue of technical glitches is concerned, that will remain unaffected by this amendment, because if there was a technical glitch because of which I could not file the Tran 1, then there was a separate notification issued extending the time limit for filing of the Tran 1. So if I am able to establish that there was a technical glitch in the system because of which I was unable to upload the Tran 1, then despite this amendment to Section 140, where the phrase within such time as may be prescribed is introduced in Section 140, I'll continue to be eligible to claim that credit. However, for cases where there is no evidence that there was a technical glitch, or the SSE admits that I forgot to file the Tran 1 within the stipulated time limit, this amendment will be against them. So now they will not be able to cite the judgment of the High Court and say that the rule is directory, there is no provision in the section, and therefore kindly grant me the tax credit. According to me, there is scope for challenge to such a provision which is made with retrospective effect. In fact, the Gujarat High Court has recently already issued notice on the matter. So now again, a fresh round of litigation will start as to what will be the effect of this amendment and whether it is constitutional or not. In other words, can the legislature introduce a retrospective time limit after the time limit has already expired? So what the legislature wants to do is that although time limit for Tran 1 expired in 2017, in 2020 they clarified that no, this is a mandatory time limit. So now the High Court will test whether such retrospective amendment is valid or not, and we'll get to know what happens on this subject. Third issue which I move to, or rather the third amendment, is an amendment to a rule. Now Rule 89 Sub-Rule 4 is the rule which provides for claim of refund by exporters. जो भी exporters है जिनको refund claim करना है, तो उनको Rule 89(4) में refund वो claim कर सकते हैं, provided they are exporting without payment of tax against LUT. Now 89(4) gives a formula for computing the refund of unutilized tax credit. Simply said, the formula only uses the ratio of my export turnover to my total turnover and you multiply that ratio with your unutilized or your net input tax credit, and whatever is the figure is the maximum refund you can claim for a particular period. Now, the amendment which is made by notification 16 of 2020 dated 23rd March 2020 is that in the formula, the phrase turnover of zero rated supply of goods is defined. In that definition, a limit is now put with effect from 23rd of March 2020 that turnover will be the value of goods, but that value cannot exceed 1.5 times the value of domestic supply of such goods. In other words, if suppose I am selling a commodity locally for rupees 100, I am also exporting that commodity. In export, I am able to earn more. I am able to earn or fetch better prices. Suppose I earn rupees 200 by exporting the same commodity. But the rule now says that you can claim refund only by considering your export turnover to the extent of 150 rupees. So 1.5 times your domestic value of that supply, that is the limit for calculation of the export turnover. According to me, this seems to have been done to curb certain overvaluation of exports which would have come to the notice of the government. Government को ऐसा लगा होगा कि कई SSEs exports को overvalue कर रहे हैं to claim more refund. But in a case where genuinely I am able to fetch a much more price in export as compared to my domestic supply, according to me, there is a problem with this formula. If I am able to establish that considering the market situation, I am able to earn more out of export and my actual export turnover is much more, or actual export value is much more than my domestic value, then according to me, this formula should not strictly apply and you will have to fight it out against the department. You should be given refund considering your actual export value, and this limit should not technically apply to you. But now they have introduced this limit. I'll give an example where this will be a problem. Suppose I export goods on CIF basis. So when I'm exporting the goods, freight and insurance are also very important or very high elements in the entire high value elements in the entire transaction. So suppose because of addition of freight and insurance, my value is getting more. Can the refund be denied to me on the ground that compared to your domestic sale, your export value is very high? That is a question which, according to me, if it is a genuine case, we can definitely fight out. On this very same aspect, another issue which has recently cropped up in a number of cases, which I would like to point out. There was a circular issued by CBIC on the 15th of March 2018. Para 9.1 of that circular said that if there are two different values specified in the GST export invoice and in the shipping bill for export, then the lower value is to be considered for the purpose of computing refund. Now, if we look at the format of the shipping bill for export as per the custom regulation, all exporters are mandatorily required to specify the FOB value of the goods. So even if it is a CIF contract, I need to specifically mention the FOB value of the goods separately in the shipping bill. So now what the authorities are taking a stand is that, so since you are mentioning the FOB value in your shipping bill, which is lower than the CIF value which is mentioned in the invoice, we will grant you refund only by considering the FOB value. We will reject refund granted on the basis of CIF value. According to me, this paragraph needs reconsideration. The rule is very clear. This amendment which was made is made effective from March 2020. That is different. But otherwise the rule, the formula prescribed in the rule is very clear. Value of the goods needs to be computed in accordance with the GST rules. customs rules cannot have any say or cannot have any effect on my computation of GST refund. So if I have made export on CIF basis, then the value of my goods, the value of my exports is the CIF value, and merely because I am mentioning the FOB value in the shipping bill in due compliance with the customs regulations, my GST refund cannot be curtailed to that effect. So according to me, this is either an erroneous circular or a misinterpretation of the circular by the authorities. In any which way, I should be granted refund considering the actual export turnover which I am able to generate and not on any other basis. If any other basis is taken, then it defeats the very purpose of section 16 of the IGST Act, which says that the exports will be zero rated. Ultimately, whatever tax I pay pertaining to exports, I need to get back. That cannot be artificially curtailed by way of a notification or a circular, etc. And if that is done, that is illegal. Next, we move to certain important judgments. First judgment which I would discuss is of practical relevance. Now, this is regarding the interplay of section 129 and section 130 of the GST Acts. 129 of the GST Acts provide that if movement of goods is in contravention of the provisions of the GST law, then the authority can detain the goods and they are to be released either on payment of tax and penalty or on giving security equal to tax and penalty. (129) subsection 6 says that if I am unable to pay this tax and penalty within 14 days of the date of detention, then further proceedings under 130 will be initiated. 130 provides for confiscation of the goods. 130 also starts with a non-obstant clause. It says, notwithstanding anything said in any other provision, there are 5 subclauses. The relevant would be if the supply or receipt of the goods is in contravention of the provisions of the Act with the intention to evade payment of tax, then the goods are liable for confiscation. So 129 simply talks about contravention of provision of Act. 130 talks about contravention of the provision of the Act with the intention to evade payment of tax. So now the issue which arose more particularly in Gujarat was that if suppose I undertake a transaction and e-way bill is not there with the transaction, whether the authority is bound to initiate proceedings under 129, thereafter whether the authority is bound to give an option of payment of tax and penalty, and whether 130 can be initiated only if the SSE does not pay that tax and penalty. Gujarat High Court interpreted these provisions in the case of Synergy Fertichem Private Limited 2020 33 GSTL 513. Gujarat High Court took a view that both provisions are independent in that sense. It is not necessary for initiating proceedings under 130 that mandatorily the provisions of 129 needs to be complied with by the authority. In other words, it is not as if only if I fail to pay the tax and penalty within 14 days that 130 can be initiated. If on the face of the transaction is with the intention to evade payment of tax, then 130 can be straight away initiated. With a very important caveat in paragraph 102 of the judgment, that such initiation cannot be on the basis of presumption. So, if suppose only e-way bill is not there, that is the only discrepancy which is found. Otherwise, there is no dispute with regard to the genuineness of the parties, then merely because e-way bill is not there, presumption cannot be drawn that it is with the intention to evade payment of tax, and on such basis 130 cannot be initiated. In fact, this absence of e-way bill was the specific example given by the High Court in the judgment, that if for absence of e-way bill you allow 130 proceedings, then 129 provision becomes redundant. 129 की कोई जरूरत ही नहीं. अगर e-way bill नहीं है और आपको confiscate कर देना है, तो फिर 130 की क्या जरूरत है? So, after the judgment of the High Court, according to me, the legal position is that we cannot insist that for each and every case, the authority has to initiate 129, only then 130. But merely on presumptions, 130 cannot be initiated. If, however, it is a gross case where evasion is palpable on the face of the material on record, then 130 can be straight away initiated without going to 129. I'll give you an example, a case which went up to the High Court, where the e-way bill was generated using the registration of a proprietary concern. The proprietor had passed away 6 months ago. This could be a case where on the very face of the transaction, it is apparent that it was with the intention to evade payment of tax. Mr. X was doing business in the name of Mr. Y. There could be no plausible reason why he was doing so, in which case authority is not bound to do 129, give option of payment of tax and penalty, then 130. That can be an example of a case where authority can straight away go to 130. But suppose Reliance Industries Limited forgets to generate e-way bill for a particular transaction. That cannot be a ground for straight away initiating confiscation proceedings against Reliance Industries Limited. Suppose Reliance Industries Limited supplying material to the Torrent Power Limited. No dispute regarding the genuineness of the parties. Only discrepancy noticed, e-way bill is not there. In such circumstances, 129 has to be followed, 130 cannot be done. A further important clarification, a circular dated 14th of September 2018 was issued by the CBIC, saying that if suppose there is only minor error in the e-way bill, then maybe even 129 will not be justified, because it was noticed that for minor spelling errors, errors in mentioning truck numbers, etc., 129 proceedings were initiated. CBIC took a view and issued a clarification that in such cases you may impose token penalty of 500 rupees, 1000 rupees, etc., but there you should not insist for tax and penalty. So there will be 3 different variants of transaction. 1, documents are there, but there is a minor error where circular applies and token penalty. 2, where one of the document itself is not there, which would warrant 129. 3, if it is a gross case of evasion where straight away 130 can be initiated. Next judgment we take up is the case of Mohit Minerals Private Limited, 2020 78 GST 519, Gujarat High Court. We would be almost all well aware of the judgment. The issue which arose was the validity of the levy of IGST on ocean freight in case of CIF contracts. Now, the basic contention before the High Court was that in case of a CIF contract of import, where the transportation is undertaken by the foreign exporter, the importer is not the recipient of the transportation service. The recipient of the transportation service is the foreign exporter. If you look at the statutory provision enabling the government to impose tax on reverse charge basis, that talks about only imposition of tax on recipients. In case of CIF contracts, the importer was not the recipient of the transportation service, and therefore the levy of IGST on importers, insofar as this transportation service was concerned, was challenged before the High Court, and it has been struck down by the High Court as being unconstitutional as well as ultra vires the provisions of the Act. According to me, it is a very sound judgment and a very sound proposition of law. There should not be even a problem if it is challenged before the Supreme Court, prima facie. But now what happens in the Supreme Court, we don't know. That is in the realms of the future. But for the time being, the questions, the ancillary questions which will arise is, what happens to people who did not challenge that levy? Suppose I paid IGST on ocean freight. I did not challenge the levy. I took credit of that ocean freight IGST. What is the position? Now, if we analyze the judgment carefully, judgment के para 197 में एक जगह ऐसा लिखा है कि the levy is also not sustainable because input tax credit is available under the provisions only to recipients. Here the importer is not even a recipient. Therefore, the importer will not be entitled to input tax credit of this IGST, which is paid on ocean freight. High Court accepted this submission that ऐसा हो सकता है कि although IGST is paid by the importer, because he is not the recipient, he is not entitled to input tax credit of that IGST. Now, if suppose the authority takes such a stand and issues a notice contesting the input tax credit granted to the SSE, according to me, it would be very absurd at the outset, because if they had issued a notification and they had imposed the tax by treating the importer as the recipient, they cannot now turn around and say that because the High Court has struck down the notification as unconstitutional, therefore we'll deny the credit. So logically, it will be sounding very absurd. But suppose strictly legally, the authority says that whatever it be, we will deny you the input tax credit because you are not the recipient of the service and you never challenge the levy of the IGST. In such scenario, we can always say that if you deny us the credit, then you give us the refund. Then the authority cannot take a view that, look, the refund is already time barred, now you don't have the time to claim the refund. This would be not a case of refund flowing from the provisions of the law. This will be refund because the act is struck down as unconstitutional. So the time limits, etc. of the GST law regarding refund will also not be applicable. So if for people who have claimed credit and there is a problem raised by the authorities in allowing the credit, we can definitely seek refund. Secondly, if suppose an SSE has not claimed credit because maybe his output commodity is not taxable or because it is outside the purview of GST, etc., then what is the remedy? There, insofar as such issues are concerned, Supreme Court Constitution Bench judgment in the case of Mafatlal took a view that if refund is arising out of striking down of a provision as unconstitutional, then the refund can be claimed either by way of a writ petition or by way of a civil suit. So according to me, the practical remedy will be, in a case where I have not claimed input tax credit of IGST paid on ocean freight, the practical remedy will be to go approach the High Court and file a writ petition claiming such refund. In fact, recently in the case of Bharat Oman Refineries Limited, an unreported decision of the Gujarat High Court, the Gujarat High Court has directed the authorities to grant refund of IGST paid on ocean freight within a fixed period of time. So for people who have not claimed the credit, they will have to approach the High Court for claiming that refund. Next, we discuss again a very recent judgment of the Gujarat High Court, again having very wide repercussions. Rule 89 Subrule 5 provides for refund of unutilized input tax credit in case of an SSE falling under inverted duty structure. पहले से ही गवर्नमेंट की ऐसी अंडरस्टैंडिंग थी that inverted duty structure applies only to inputs, not to input services. In other words, अगर मेरा इनपुट का रेट 18% है और आउटपुट का रेट 5% है तो आई एम अंडर इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी स्ट्रक्चर। पर अगर मेरा इनपुट और आउटपुट दोनों 5% है और इनपुट सर्विसेज 18% है तो आई एम नॉट अंडर इनपुट इन्वर्टेड ड्यूटी स्ट्रक्चर। सेकेंडली, सपोज मेरा इनपुट 18% है, आउटपुट 5% है, तो मुझे रिफंड सिर्फ वो इनपुट के पर्टेनिंग इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट का मिलेगा। I will not get refund pertaining to input services. The basis for the understanding of the government was, if you look at section 54 subsection 3, it talks of refund of unutilized input tax credit. The circumstance in which such input tax credit refund is allowable is 1, if it is a zero rated supply; 2, if the credit has accrued on account of rate of tax on inputs being higher than output supplies. तो ये inputs phrase को गवर्नमेंट ने पकड़ लिया और उन्होंने ऐसा कंटेंशन किया कि therefore you are entitled only to inputs, not input services. Gujarat High Court recently in the case of VKC Footsteps India Private Limited, SCA number 2792 of 2019, decided on 24th of July 2020, read down this formula in 89.5 and took a view that the phrase which is important is unutilized input tax credit. The refund is of unutilized input tax credit, which takes within its ambit inputs as well as input services. Therefore, refund has to be given even of input tax credit pertaining to input services. The second important reason given by the High Court was that if you look at the proviso says inputs compared with output supplies. So output, you take into consideration both goods and services. So inputs also you need to do accordingly. The phrase inputs needs to be read with the phrase supplies. So it has to, the provision has to be read as input supplies over output supplies, and therefore also input supplies would include inputs as well as input services. Now, the incidental questions which arise in the application of this judgment is, first, what happens in a case where I am not claiming refund under inverted duty structure at all? In such a scenario, subject to availability of time limit, I can now file an online refund application claiming refund of input services. Suppose I was under the impression that my goods which I purchase and sell both are under 5%, so I am not entitled under inverted duty structure. But I had unutilized input tax credit because of input services which were taxable at 18%. This is in fact a very pertinent example is in the quarry industry, where the minerals are both taxable at 5%, but the royalty is chargeable at 18%, which is of a very high quantum. So, in fact, one of the petitioners before the High Court were the quarry owners. So, in such cases where I did not file refund application at all under inverted duty structure, I can very well now file the refund application, and it has to be decided in accordance with the judgment of the High Court. Second, and more importantly, what happens in cases where I did file refund applications under inverted duty structure but claimed refund only to the extent of inputs? Because the rule and the circular said that you can claim only up to inputs. So I claimed only up to inputs. I did not claim for input services. Now the High Court judgment says that you can claim for input services. What happens in such scenario? Now, I have been told that the portal does not allow filing of refund application again for the same period under inverted duty structure, even if I have the time limit. So today we are in September 2020. Suppose I want to claim refund for September 2019. I have already filed the refund application for inputs. पर इनपुट सर्विसेज के लिए मैंने नहीं किए because my understanding was कि वो नहीं मिलती है अभी. Even if I want to claim that refund, the portal does not allow me to do so. According to me, firstly, there is a problem with the portal. Within the time limit, there is no legal embargo against filing of multiple refund applications. अगर मैं एक पीरियड के लिए एक रिफंड एप्लीकेशन डालता हूं, फिर 3 महीने बाद मुझे रियलाइज होता है कि मैं थोड़ा रिफंड मांगना मैं भूल गया हूं. There is no embargo under law which says that once you have filed a refund application, you can't file again for that same period. But the portal does not allow. If the portal does not allow, we'll have to file a refund application manually. If they don't recognize the manual application, if they don't process the manual application, you will have to fight it out in court. But according to me, at least insofar as the period which is within the limitation, you should be entitled to refund of the input services. You cannot be denied on the ground कि आप High Court नहीं गए थे. भले हम High Court नहीं गए थे, but once the High Court judgment is there, that is applicable to all assessees, and therefore if I am falling within the limitation period, then I need to be given refund at least to that extent. Insofar as the refund which is beyond the limitation, suppose 2 साल हो गए हैं वो period के, और उससे पहले का कोई unutilized credit है जिसका मैंने refund application नहीं दिया है, there if it is a substantial amount, we'll have to canvass before the court that again this is not a refund which is flowing from the provision, this is a refund which is flowing as a result of the rule being read down by the High Court, and therefore kindly grant me the refund even of the prior period. That would be a process you will have to undertake through court. But leaving that aside for the time being, at least insofar as the refund which is available to you within the time limit which is stipulated under the GST law, one way or the other, you have to be allowed that refund claim. Third incidental issue which arises is whether this judgment has any applicability to capital goods credit. Now, according to me, ये एक interesting question होने वाला है. Logically speaking, capital goods credit, I will not be immediately utilizing in that sense in the very same period. अगर मैं plant and machinery लाता हूँ, तो that will be of durable nature. So technically, my output tax liability of the next 5 years has to be taken into consideration for comparing it with my inputs or with my capital goods credit. But legally, the law does not envisage maintaining a one-on-one correlation between my input goods or capital goods or input service and my outputs. जैसे ही मैं कुछ purchase करता हूँ, that goes into a pool of goods or services which are used in the course or furtherance of business. अगर मैं capital goods भी purchase करता हूँ, the credit which I claim is input tax credit. If you look at the definition of input tax is defined to mean any goods or services which are used in the course or furtherance of business. Input tax does not exclude capital goods. Capital goods is excluded only from the definition of input. But now the Gujarat High Court takes a view that you don't need to look at the definition of input. The more important phrase which needs to be kept in mind is input tax credit and unutilized input tax credit. So now another offshoot question can be, can I claim refund of unutilized input tax credit pertaining to capital goods? According to me, strictly speaking, yes. Logically, no. And therefore, if we want to claim, we'll have to again fight it out. If we strictly apply the judgment of the Gujarat High Court, then refund of unutilized input tax credit, even pertaining to capital goods, needs to be given to me if I am under inverted duty structure. Fourth, again an offshoot question pertaining to this same provision, which has arisen in a number of cases. Now, if you look at section 54.3 regarding refund, there is a third, after these two provisos regarding inverted duty structure, etc., there is a third proviso which says that such refund will not be granted to a supplier who claims duty drawback in respect of central tax, or who has claimed refund of the integrated tax paid on supplies. Now the issue which is arising is, suppose I am an exporter. My output tax rate is 5%. My input rate is 18%. I opt for the option of paying tax and claiming refund. So मैं 5% भर देता हूँ और 5% का refund claim करता हूँ as payment of as refund of IGST paid. Question is whether I am entitled to claim refund under inverted duty structure also. Technically, I am an exporter. I am also falling under inverted duty structure. The view of the department is that the proviso says that once you claim refund of integrated tax paid on supplies, you are not entitled to claim refund of unutilized tax credit. According to me, if we interpret the provision purposively, the provision applies only qua exporter. It does not apply qua inverted duty structure. So as an exporter, if I make payment of IGST and claim refund, then again as an exporter under 89.4, I cannot claim refund of unutilized input tax credit. That is what the proviso ensures, that you don't take double benefit. You don't claim refund of IGST paid on exports, and simultaneously you also don't take refund of the unutilized input tax credit. But suppose, apart from being an exporter, I am also under inverted duty structure, then I am not claiming refund as an exporter. The second refund which I am claiming is under inverted duty structure, and according to me, that refund should be admissible. This issue is likely to go on, and ultimately some court will have to settle it. The last judgment, because of paucity of time, I will just deal with comment and then we can close. The last judgment which I'll deal with is for academic use rather than practical utility. We have heard of late that the central government is not paying GST compensation to the states. So many states are taking objection to this stand of the central government. The moot point for academic studies, if suppose a Congress government, a Congress state government feels that I cannot function without this GST compensation, I now need to on my own raise additional revenue. Issue is whether it can impose additional SGST or whether it can unilaterally increase the rate of tax of SGST in that particular state. In other words, whether it is open for the state government or for the state legislature to diverge from the recommendation of the GST Council and diverge from the central GST law formulated by the Parliament. Now, here just briefly, if we look at the provisions of the Constitution, GST Council is merely a recommendatory body. Both Parliament and the state legislature can levy tax on supply of goods and services. So a state legislature can take a stand that, look, I have plenary power to impose SGST on supplies taking place within my state. GST Council has made a recommendation. I refuse to abide by that recommendation. I will impose an increased rate of tax on some particular supplies. In this context, recently Gujarat High Court in the case of Reliance Industries Limited, SCA 14206 of 2018 decided on 16th of April 2020, analyzed the scope of the power of the state legislatures. Of course, in that case, the issue was whether the VAT Act can be amended after the GST came into force. Although there is a slight difference in both the examples, ultimately the issue is the same. What is the scope of the power of the state legislature after implementation of the GST regime? Gujarat High Court in the case of Reliance Industries Limited takes a view that under the scheme of GST, Parliament and the state legislature have to function parallelly. The state legislature does not have unilateral power, and therefore that subsequent amendment of VAT Act after the implementation of the GST law was struck down by the Gujarat High Court. So this will be an interesting battle between the states and the center. And ultimately, I believe it is the Supreme Court which will decide this particular aspect of the law. But according to me, there are arguments available on both sides, and therefore a state can also say that whatever be the scheme of the GST law, ultimately Constitution does not curtail my power to impose SGST, so I will do what I want. Again, as I said, because of paucity of time, we have analyzed certain judgments which are of practical utility, and I have ended with a judgment which is of academic interest, but as tax professionals, we should be aware of the issue which can, of the macro issue which can arise in our country. All in all, this is again an ongoing exercise. If 3 months down the line, another webinar is organized, by that time, we'll already have more amendments, more judgments, which we'll have to discuss. But according to me, what we need to ensure is that we just don't take the amendment or the judgments on their face value. We need to analyze them threadbare, and we also need to find out the issues which would crop up because of that amendment and that judgment. And if we are able to do that, then we'll have a more holistic picture of the GST law which is evolving. Thank you all for a very patient hearing.
Thank you, Uchit Bhai. Thank you very much. Before we initiate the question answer session, I personally have 1 or 2 questions regarding. One is on the ocean freight, what you have mentioned. Sir, recently the central government have initiated, means the CGST department have initiated the audit procedure for 17-18 and 18-19. Okay, now they are raising the demand of interest of late payment of ocean freights. So what would be the view?
No. So right now there is no question of making any more payment on ocean freight. Although we have made payment because at that relevant point of time, the levy was in existence. Now the fact is that that levy itself is not in existence. So because the levy has been struck down, there is absolutely no question of payment of any interest.
No, but they are issuing the so-called notice.
You will have to challenge that.
Yes,
you will have to challenge that.
Of course. Before going further, I would like to mention few of the names, few of the members who are patiently hearing Uchit sir. K. Venkatramani sir, GP Mehta sir, Kishore Ghiwala sir, Samir Shah sir, Saraiya sir, Manubhai Waghela, especially B.S. Sitapati sir, Kamal Parikh ji, Lalit Lehua sir, B.R. Kaushal sir, Kamlesh Patel ji, Jatin Bhatt ji, Himanshu Kothari ji, Bhavya Popat ji, Tejas Shah ji, and Deepak Shah ji. Of course, there are few names, Sridhar ji and many, but all are very much appreciated because of your patience hearing. And Nigam ji, now all proceeding goes to you. Nigam ji. Nigam ji, are you?
One minute, sir. 1 minute, sir. Due to time constraint, question answer is not able to be here. We cannot conduct the further question answer. But right now, Galaxy S6, Galaxy X's member is there. Is there any question from you, sir? Immediately, please ask question because we have another webinar also. Miss Galaxy S6 Edge. I think he is not available. So on behalf of all members, I am requesting Mr. Pratik Patel of TAG, Secretary of TAG, to deliver his vote of thanks. Mr. Pratik.
Thank you, sir.
Pratik ji, I want to mention we have a member presence in this webinar from Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, South Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, as well as the Jammu Kashmir also, and so please go ahead with your speech.
Hello and good evening, friends. At the outset, firstly, I would like to thank Sri Sunil Bhai Keshwani, President of the Tax Advocate Association Gujarat, Sri Urvis Bhai Patel, President of the Gujarat Celtex Bar Association, Nigam Bhai Shah and Akshat Bhai Vyas are the founder member of the National Association of Tax Professionals, and convener Sri Varis Isani ji of TAG for giving me opportunity to propose vote of thanks. The eminent speaker of the day, Advocate Uchit Bhai Sheth, for giving his talk on overview of recent amendment in GST from January 2020 and latest judgment under the GST Act. I would extend our deep sense of gratitude toward the speaker for sharing their knowledge on the topic which concern all of us. Lastly, I would like to appreciate and acknowledge the strength and support provided by all present here and make our webinar successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pratik ji. Dear friends, I would like to draw your attention that recently Uchit ji has discussed on approx 12 notifications, major notifications, more than 10 judgments. And lastly, last judgment which was discussed by him is very much required to be discussed in future also. And once again, I am unmuting all members.
Our webinar will be available on YouTube also after.
Okay. Okay, so friends, our webinar also available on YouTube. A link will be shared with Akshat ji. Facebook, it will be available on Facebook. And once again, personally, Uchit ji, I am very much thankful to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, friends, I am unmuting all.
Uchit bhai, you are now it's a family talk. Sitapati ji, after I just want to ask you that what is your COVID experience?
Sitapati ji, continue please. You can unmute yourself.
Because in this 70-year age and with the heart problem, you are fully recovered with the COVID. So it's very good. How is your experience? Sitapati ji left. Left page,
so all members are unmuted. You can discuss amongst us. Within 5 minutes, this session will be closed.